even know that I've been on sabbatical study leave for the past almost 9 months to a year now. I've not been on duty. I've just been executively running these institutions and the other companies that I have, and no one has actually seen that I'm not in action. But this particular team that I recently just had to officially acknowledge and ascend to these positions actually ran the show. For the first time I walked into that graduation, I walked in dressed up and looking all posh for the first time. I did not see whether there was deco was pink, yellow. I was not part of it. They did everything. So that actually said to me, then I'm able to pass through the generational ladder, because then they have climbed up in the past 2.5 years. This team has been with me for almost 2.5 years. And one of them, which I make a disclaimer every day, was that we run institutions and we curate organizations, but we don't have the legacy lineage, which is where we lose it. And I believe when somebody sent me a message and said, but isn't this young man your nephew? And I said, this is where I want it, because how on earth will somebody understand this dream, this calling, if they're not coming directly from where I'm standing? Because we've got people who are pushing big industry organizations, but they do not have the family support, which is very much crucial. You know, when they say it's a critical need when somebody goes into an environment of economic development, socio-economic development. If it does not work with your family, it might not even be sustainable outside of where you're gonna be. And this is where on Friday, I became very emotional, and I did so well without even crying, that one of my 20 goals has been achieved by empowering young people to continue running the college. Because when I turned 35, I made it a disclaimer that after 35, you step down as a principal for this college. Because how are we going to evolve if I'm gonna, you know, resuscitate, people that come from other industry or from the same industry, but they are quite old, to actually become innovative? Because this is where we are now. Innovative. You want energies that will run, will not be clouded by other social structures or previous knowledge. I always say we love legacy, but also legacy has got side effects. When you want to legacify innovation, you have to come in as a new brand and also build a path and also develop an innovative industry and institutional development that is immersed with technology. Now, tech is a must. Tech is the DNA that we are working in. Because I told the team that in the next coming 2.5 years, I expect you to not even have any paper flying in this institution, because then it shows that we are innovatively growing. We are able to do smart farming, agripedia, some things that we have not really been even teaching our community to understand what is agripedia. And but yeah, it's a path and a journey. And but I'm also so grateful that it touched me, because I think as a calling, it firstly has to touch you and leave you in an uncomfortable space, and then you climb and jump in it, but you also remember to live and breathe while you are at it.
Wow, that's so powerful. Just hearing you speak that you have single handedly built this from scratch, blood, sweat, and tears over the last decade, it's simply amazing. Like I said this to you, like I strongly believe that you're just embodying one of my beliefs, which is that the solutions that we need in Africa must be built by Africans for Africa. You are just an embodiment of that fact, just an embodiment of that fact. And it's beautiful to see that somewhere within the continent, someone as yourself is doing this. and
Thank
and,
you.
and, and one of the beautiful things about inspirational stories as yours is the fact that when people begin to see and hear that there are other people doing tremendous things, I think there's something that comes with that boldness to want to dare to do more. Because you just living full out gives people permission to say, okay, if Professor Gabby can do this, definitely, I think I can. I think I can. And it's beautiful. Well done. And so
Thank you.
I'm just going to read out your bio so that our guests that are here on the call get to know you a bit. And so, guys, Dr. Gabby's bio is really long, like really, really long. It's like I feel like it's like a two-pager document. So, but guys, I'm only going I'm only going to read out what is pertinent to our conversation today. But trust me, she has done amazing, amazing thing. Like her outreach is beyond South Africa. It's impacting the entire continent in itself. So guys, I'm just going to read out just a portion of it. So don't get it twisted. This what I'm reading out is beyond, but I'm just going to read out what is pertinent to our conversation today. So, Professor Gabby is a visionary educator, entrepreneur, author, and a community leader who works in transforming agriculture, education, and enterprise in South Africa and beyond. She's the founder of a unique educational ecosystem that spans across from primary down to university level through institutions like Tuatule Agriculture Primary School, Tuatule Agricultural University, and this Vision Quest Institute, a center that is committed to blending indigenous knowledge with modern agricultural science. Dr. Gabby is a trailblazer and entrepreneur, leading ventures such as Mosimo Clothing, ZO FM Radio, Ganzid Mining and Petroleum, all built to empower community, preserve cultural identity, and promote sustainable development. She's a celebrated author and has written four impactful books on leadership, resilience, community development, and growth, including the Unanticipated Life, The Returned Soldier, where she courageously shares her battle with cervical cancer. Through her work, Dr. Gabby champions collective development, sustainable progress, and empowerment of Africa's next generation. At the core, she's a proud mother whose leadership is deeply rooted in values of legacy, cultural preservation, and collective success. Dr. Gabby, welcome once again to the AIAN Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Perfect. And so we are having a conversation around building sustainable agricultural education for Africa's future. And I believe that you are such an amazing person that is suitable for this conversation because of what you've built over the years. And so, as we start out the conversation today, my very first question to you is what sort of inspired you to build an entire educational ecosystem dedicated solely to agriculture from primary school down to university level?
Thank you. I think it's quite a lot of things that embedded the journey to begin, but moreover, it was the access to a higher education. Growing up in the rural areas, opportunities were not always coming through. We would read about opportunities, we would see other kids on TV having these opportunities, but we were actually not even thinking or believing that we are given such opportunities or we have access to them. And I think by God's grace, I got to be in Gauteng at quite a young age, post high school. And this happens at the time where I had a car accident with my brother, and obviously he passes, and I'm on a recovery journey. And part of my therapy was when we would do a garden with my mother, and one lady saw that I'm actually doing this every day, and I was on a wheelchair, by the way. And so she constantly came and said, there's this program where you can enhance this skill, because we started eating from the mini garden that I had with my mother. And she then advised there were programs that are, more immersive in just giving you more skill and knowledge, because she could see my garden was doing so well, but I was not selling. It was just for me and my mom to eat, but also it was for me to not feel depressed at the same time. And I remember her bringing the application at home, and when she did, we then started applying, and I got into being admitted in a learnership then. And learnership back in the days didn't have money. You just had to come and study. And in the process of that, I am moved from Gauteng to from Joburg, Pretoria, to KwaZulu Natal, which is where I'm based now. For I don't know how many years now, I've been coming and going, but eventually took a decision that let me come down fully and stay here. So coming to a province which I can't even speak their language, but all I came here for is knowledge. And by that time, I was already started walking a bit, and the rest became the word. The world is your oyster. That's when I understood, because just getting accepted from that application, which I'm sure there were multiple applications that were waiting. Then it came back to me that definitely the world is an oyster, but how do you take it forth? And that is where our young people discord it these days. And 2 years into the program, towards the exit, I was supposed to graduate. I couldn't, because I had already gotten a new engagement under the same spectrum, because I was so restless. I was so hyper. And growing up, I remember that people used to say, I'm too forward and all that. But actually, it was just the talent in me that was restless. I realized very late when I see it with my kids, when they're a little bit, hyper. And I'm like, no, this is not hyper. It's actually a talent calling and kicking. It wants to come out of them, because this is how it happens to me. But obviously, the landscape then was not really accommodating this type of opportunity. So in a nutshell, what brought it forth was my upbringing personally, and also seeing that young people leave their hometowns to go and do academic programs in different provinces, but some don't make it even to come home, because when they get into these provinces, lifestyle changes, systems, financial dependency becomes high. Some come back with, live as daughters, and they come back as parents, and their parents also, you know 10 instantly becomes grandmothers. That's one thing that I made sure, was that my mother will never be a grandmother when I have not shown her this is my house. And sadly, she left the world before I could even become the mother, because she also had her own battle with intestine cancer. So it is a lineage of
Okay, guys, just bear with us. I think we're having a bit of connectivity issues, but just hang in there. Mm. So, guys, just bear with us. I think we're having a bit of connectivity issue, but Dr. Gabby would be right back in no time.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So it was sustaining us during the time I was on a wheelchair. My mother would not even buy veggies, because our little garden was sustaining us, and that was us saving a little bit more money, and also just getting a nutritious meal, because my spinach was the most beautiful one. And I learned tricks, and then I started getting into YouTube, learning a little bit more. So yeah, for me, DNA of food security definitely is the reason why I'm in the.
Wow, it's just beautiful to hear that your journey started out with just wanting to create solutions for yourself, your mom. Also, the journey started out with you wanting to also be useful at the time, even when you were dealing with a couple of challenges relating to like the accident and things. And I think that from what you've also shared, one of the things that is prevalent is that as young people, we always have the resources to start out from where we are with what we have. We always have the resources to start out, from where we are with what we have. And so, my next question to you at this time is, how does agricultural education at primary level, secondary level, helps to shape like the future leaders in that sector? Just grounding them in that knowledge from way from primary to secondary. How does that help to shaping the future of leaders in that sector?
Actually, I think it's a bit of both. Because the the decision to branch into the primary school, it's started when I realized that there's so many young kids that are taken out of their normal academic program in primary schools because they're either declared slow learners or they are just having learning difficulties. And in actual fact, I then learned that this is the struggle that I used to have myself, where I'll be done with whatever that needs to be done in school and I'm bored and I'll become restless. And ultimately, I have so much energy and time and and creativity vested in me, but it was not coming forth because the environment was not conducive enough. So that was my first specific reasons that everyone that is being declared, because this is the powerful thing that you say in a human's life, you declare that they are not fit or even having learning difficulties. But when you bring them to the agricultural space, they showing you flames. I mean, most of the agricultural farmers are super commercial farmers. If you go to them directly, they are actually not even having the highest qualification, but it's because of the calling and the skill and also the zeal that comes with them. So it means had they been given opportunities very early, they could have become the best farmers that the country has. But now the mistake we make, we want to do agriculture when we get to university, not in high school, not in primary, but only in high school. I mean in university. And that also does not teach you to be the best practice farmer because you do not have the crust knowledge. You come in and do it in an academic base, and then you've got like this one, two, three projects, then you are done. Kanti, this is more of a lifestyle, lifetime, life embodiment, because we have to eat. Everybody goes and go and strikes and have this protest, but when they come home, they're hungry, they must eat. Who must produce food? The farmer. I always say, there's a saying that it's now a public statement where they say, if you have eaten today, thank the farmer, because it doesn't matter what you have eaten, one way or the other, there's a work of a farmer inside your meal, inside your nutritional, you know, diet. So it is quite imperative. And the leaderships of multiple countries, because now I don't speak South Africa, I speak sub-Saharan Africa when I speak. Because no matter how much I want to try and seclude and say South Africa, South Africa comes in Africa, and Africa is me. And if we do not go live onto making sure that we produce food that can sustain, leadership of today requires to also have some impactful self impact impacted knowledge. This is where even leaders, I always say when I meet people, and some don't even stay in my relationship cycle, because I'll always tell people that just go and do, even if it's one course, because common sense is no longer common. We pay money to get common sense. So this is now the saddest part that we get, and unfortunately we cannot do anything about it. The best thing that we can do is for us to curate policies. We can curate them from the soil and then just put them into a document, not start by curating them in a document and want to try it on a soil. That is an opposite. It will never be sustainable.
Wow. Ooh, I like how you answer the questions. And from what you've shared, it shows that you totally absolutely believe in full integration, full immersion. Because with that, we can be certain that the outcomes will be sustainable. And given the illustration you made talking about kids that are classified as slow learners, but I think that we also in this part of the world, or like in the continent, we also need to give more attention to things you just mentioned, because there are a couple of kids like that. They are not quick in terms of like numeracy and literacy, but they are good with their hands. they're energetic. How so agriculture is also another way to engage these kids. That's beautiful. I have never really thought about it like that. Beautiful. So this usually happens to me every single time on the podcast when I have like guests come on. It's like every time they speak, some sort of light bulb just goes up in my like, oh my god, I've never really seen it that way. Wow, that's amazing, amazing, good, really. And I think there's something I want to say, but I
Oh
think that
no, feel free because just to interject you, I always come up with a statement where I say I have a toolbox that has got every tool that I come that is going to help me fix every challenge that I come across. So it is a statement that I said at the time when I was still on a wheelchair, and people never understood why I mentioned that. Actually, there's a publication that is somewhere on Google, because if you go to Google, I think I live on Google every night. But it also so amazing to see myself as somebody that is not just, the world today feeds us with influencers, but when you are influencing challenge, stepping up and growth and development, for me, I will come in at any point in time, and also just clap together, because looking at this right now, I mean, it's an economic critical scarce skill, and critical scarce industry involvement. How many schools or how many organization in this continent has been able to adopt these children, not only just making them do artisan, because not everyone must become an artisan. Some needs to move and divert into this other spectrum. If you go to the villages in South Africa, particularly in Eastern Cape, because I worked a lot with farmers, smallholder farmers in Eastern Cape, they are able to administer treatment on their livestock on their own, because they have learned the skill over the years. For years and years, we've been dipping cows on our traditional dips, and these days we've got livestock problems because we have lost all our traditional practices of doing farming indigenously, which was the most organic way. Right now, we want to buy everything. Like I said to you, that common sense is no longer common. We have to pay money to get common sense. So it's an unfortunate disability that we are constantly building, and we have also built an altar to it, and also we have now made it a dependency syndrome, that we're going to just buy everything under the sun.
that's really deep, really deep. And just going back and just thinking about what you just talked about, and I I would say I would say I wish, but it also it's a call for action as well. I think maybe other parts of Africa can sort of imbibe what you have going on in South Africa. Because here, they're like, oh, kids with special needs, and they take them to like special classes where they play with, maybe like balls and build Legos, and but there's nothing to just really engage them to try to see how they can come up with things. But this is also like a really good way to engage them, and I never really talked about it. But be way beyond that, but with the ecosystem you're building, immersing children in agriculture away from primary school, secondary school, and tertiary, there's a sense of responsibility and pride that it gives to such a learner to want to be engaged with it. Because one of the reasons why I started this podcast is because I had conversations with people within the space, and one of the challenge that I keep hearing is lack of labor force. Lack of labor force. Young people don't want to be engaged in agriculture. However, they have the notion or the idea that agriculture is just like cutlass and hoes, and so it's like a profession that is not dignified. There's nothing to it. And I said to myself, what exactly can I do to this? I need to have conversations with people that are changing the narrative, innovators, change makers, so that people can see that, oh, you can be in this space and thrive.
True,
this
true.
this is really good. And I like when you talk about like indigenous practice, right? Because now we are so inclined to different, things that are different in terms of like practices. And just speaking about indigenous practice, what roles does indigenous, knowledge play in teaching, in your teaching approach, right? And why is it important to also preserve this alongside, modern agricultural practices?
Yeah. In fact, this is quite interesting because I recently had an indigenous knowledge and food symposium about a month ago too, in May. And in this one particularly, my cry was one: how much we are not using the indigenous, ecosystem that we have. I looked into the segment where we harvest shrubs from the fields, and what we then do, we leave all the holes open. And I'm not the only harvester. There's multiple harvesters, and then there's patches of holes left across the ecosystem. And before you know it, we start having something that is declining of the very same shrub that we are looking for. I'll make one familiar example. In South Africa, now that we've got flu, I mean, I'm one of the people that has got flu now since yesterday. There's a particular shrub that we go and collect from the bush, which is medicinally safe, and we use it. But when we harvest it, we actually leave the holes open, and that actually affects our ecosystem, because come rain and winds and stuff, there's soil erosion starts, and then there's cracks and patches everywhere, and before you know it, you actually have a decline of that particular cultivar, not replantable, because those are naturally replantable. When you harvest, always remember to leave a portion of it, or the root stems, and cover so that the roots can regerminate, and then the plant comes back. And that is now resuscitation and sustainability of indigenous shrubs. Making an example with that one particularly, so it's one of those eco knowledge that no one knows, that we are actually responsible to make sure that we sustain our indigenous knowledge and I mean knowledge and shrubs and plants. You look at how people now are using the very same fertile grounds to dump, non-disposable products, whereas we could actually be taking them to, to shred them. Instead, we throw them. The whole field is now filled up with filthy. We've got cows and goats that are eating, diapers now, and you're thinking you're buying a very fresh goat, and only to find out that digestion is bloated. It just has a big stomach. It's actually not the meat that you need. The carcass is damaged already, because by the time you get there is septicemia that is already there, and you can't even consume. I always make a joke with my students, and I say, welcome to the industry where you get to eat your patients when they die. Just simultaneously playing with them so that they can understand that you actually get to decide what type of meat you want to eat, and how do you preserve your meat. Because in part of the programs that we do meat classification, meat examination, where they even understand the portions of the meat. And but moreover, we do animal dissecting, where they learn on organs of whatever species that we are currently going to be studying about. So it's quite i- embodied as well, that we need to preserve our indigenous shrubs in many ways, because part of our health and medicinal synchronizes back to that. Now I have flu, I want lemongrass. I have lemongrass on my hybrid garden, because I have a hybrid garden where I can move it to any place at any time. So those are not actually informed, and because it's in a pot, I classify it as an indigenous crop. I've got alu outside. It's an indigenous crop, It started on its own. We just started harvesting it and putting it into pots and making it look more fancier. And then we put price tag, we put, label and status, because it has been processed for multiple reasons. And ultimately, we had forgotten that everything comes from indigenous knowledge. However, we now have technology that helps us blend from the indigenous crops to the artificial crops, because this is what people need to learn, that if any plant or vegetable or whatever it is, if it doesn't come with seeds, it means it cannot give birth. That we need to understand. Plants and seeds and crops are like us humans. If you have to have seeds inside of you that you can plant. What seed am I planting? I'm planting an agricultural knowledge and education. That is the seed I have. Now, same applies to you buy a watermelon, there's no seeds inside. How are you going to replant and reproduce? So those are some of the things that when technology comes in, we tend to become too excited, but we don't actually check what are we doing to the ecosystem. We are slowly reducing the reproduction, and very soon we will have to buy a watermelon for 500 bucks instead of just planting it your own and harvesting it. So this is quite imperative to sustain our indigenous system and traditional practices of farming.
This is beautiful. This is beautiful. I like how at the core, one of the core things for you is also food security and food sustainability. Food security. I love that as well. I really do love that. So, can you tell me how your institution sort of prepares like the African, African farmers today to address some of the unique challenges that we face, and such as like climate change and even food insecurity?
Yeah, we are fully much custodians of environmental impact assessments. That is very much crucial to us, because this is why, number one, I stop any student that wants to study with us to move from their home to come and want to stay in the cities and think they're going to do agriculture in the cities. If you're studying agriculture, there's no agriculture in the cities. I need to start there, because we need to make sure that people understand that there is no agriculture in the cities. In the cities, we've got concrete jungles, and this is where you can't produce food. Now, my programs replically say, if you are staying in a province, I'll make an example with my hometown province, Mpumalanga. I have never allowed any student to move out of Mpumalanga to come to where I am because they must study here. No, they need to learn about the ecosystem and environmental management of Mpumalanga, particularly, so that they are able to produce and become big yielders of their producers. Because if I take you to KZN, there's a huge yield of a sea. How, I mean, yes, there is a seawater farming which we are currently exploring, but the community won't survive from one vegetation. The community need multiple vegetation for them to actually sustain health wise, and of course nutrition. But in actual fact, I serenade heavily with the environmental impact, because it comes back again to say, where are you going to be doing this? And this is why we've got satellite campuses in communities, instead of having, so we've got one main campus which is here in Durban where I am, and then we've got multiple campus in multiple communities in all the provinces, where we use structures that are in partnership with traditional leaders, and we actually use them, because again, when you look at the formulation of agriculture, it works parallel with the traditional association, whether you call it chiefs or kings, because without them, they are custodian of the land. So you can't go and want to do farming and they are not part of the stakeholders. It goes and diverts, because municipality will always be there, but again, municipality works in a form of policy corsets, and they've got to call a meeting to plan another meeting and to discuss something else. But ultimately, the land custodians, which are the chiefs, are the main stakeholders to our institution at all times. We make sure that we are also sharing the space with them, because they carry heavy of these opportunities for us, because without them we do not have the land. And the environmental aspect, now I've also taken a call to go into multiple communities of the traditional sector to re-educate them on what they can actually be doing to make sure that they are not losing certain vegetation that will eventually, after 10 years, do no longer come out every season. We've got an abundance of guava trees in South Africa, but because of the water absorption that they have, they've been having programs where they cut them down. But ultimately, we need this very same guava trees to identify our water spots in communities and in lands that we want to accommodate. Because if there's a guava tree, it means there's subsistence water or substantial water forces underground, and you then only just maintain and manage so that it does not absorb a lot. And a guava tree, if it's alone, it does not survive so well, because it needs to eat from different nutrients of other plants. So but moreover, now I'm one of the person, every afternoon I drink guava leaves tea, because it helps me in health purposes, so I don't have to take so much antibiotics, and for me, this is where the environment, the indigenous plants, everything just comes together and embody itself. But again, we also need the very same plants where cows will be very thirsty, and they can eat certain leaves that actually quench their thirst. And that is something that it's a knowledge that is not written in any book. You see over time, when you start working in this industry, that, oh, they actually, this was a dry season, but these kettles didn't die, and they were constantly harvesting this particular tree. That means it's also one of the substantial nutrients that assist in thirst quenching. So yeah, it's the same will, and I call it the agricultural SDGs.
Wow, I like that. The agricultural SDGs. Wow, I like that. I like that. I think one of the beautiful thing about engaging in farming is your access to like fresh food, fresh fruits, and even like organic stuff, which helps you stay healthy. So there's that to it. And I like how you talked about the fact that, work deciding to work in this space, you have to come to terms with that you would be part of the rural dwellers, right? You can't do that in the urban areas. It has to be the rural community. I recently visited like a farm that had like 5,000 hectares. A huge chunk of it was like a forest. They had like a lot of cocoa plantation, palm plantation. A huge chunk of that 500 hectares was like a forest. I kept walking and walking and walking and walking. It was just like a very beautiful experience for me. And it was in the rural parts of the state. So I had to like be on a bike, go to like rural areas or the Leighton roads. I'm just like, oh my, this is not what you see in the city. And but guess what? What I realized was the air was fresher, it was less dense, and the area was a bit cooler compared to the city. I was like, oh my
True,
god,
true.
these guys here are enjoying, like they don't even like natural air conditioning, just natural, just because of the vegetations around around that region. Okay, so I'd like to know your own take on this. What are some of like the practical skills do you believe that every agricultural student needs to master before they start out working or starting out a farm?
I think for them, what is more important is to not be limited to one segment of their farming fraternity. I'll tell you about this, because when I started my agriculture, I was doing plant production, and at that time, it just felt like it was the only thing. If I tell you now that I've immersed myself from being in a plant production, I have done animal production, I've done pest control. I have done poultry, because I used to think that animals is the same thing until I got into the industry and realized that piggery is an own segment industry, poultry is an own segment industry, and then livestock, which is the small sheeps and kettles, were a different segment on the agriculture industry. So then comes grain, which is falls under, your cones. And then again you become a mediator of these industry segments, in a nutshell. And the skill that I actually realized very late that I needed to have was to be able to train somebody. That is the biggest skill, because when you know something and you have actually immersed yourself into something, you are able to teach other people. That is the skill I didn't have, how to teach. And then I walked into a program where they train you to become a trainer, because you also have to comply. And actually I was like, if I known this, I would have actually engaged young people who always wanted to go into teaching and actually didn't have a way, because doing the facilitator course taught me how to engage in different varieties of audiences. And doing the assessor course taught me how to assess multiple knowledge landscape, variability as well. And also becoming a moderator, that was the biggest thing for me. And later escalated to skills development facilitator, where I can actually segmentize how to place individuals into places of them. So for every agriculturalist in Africa or the whole continent, primary responsibility is to be able to impart the skill, because you can't fill up a tank and not expect to use the water. I always say, when I disappear and go into my own space, I'm like, I'm going to refill, because I've been feeling that I'm running on a reserve, and it's normal. But if you keep on filling and filling, and this water tank is not being used, or the water is not being drained for multiple use, then for me it's pointless, because you've got the knowledge but it's not impacting. And this is why it's also going to be difficult for somebody to take it out into a business perspective, because agriculture on its own is a business. It depends how you carry yourself with it. When I started, for me it was education, and I later realized, no man, I'm a businesswoman in this industry. I make things happen. Why can't I just start, building and bringing other people on board? And of course, when it's a calling, it will even make you become restless, to a point that you just don't want to be the only one walking into this path. And not being afraid to go into multiple, spaces. Somebody said to me, you run 10 companies on a daily basis. How do you survive? And I said, it's not even that. Once you learn how to farm, or how you learn how to be in a farming industry, actually you have mastered any other thing. That's why if I would take a course, particularly in this year, I'm studying with 4 universities at the same time, and I still have to come back and become a mommy. I have to run these businesses, I have to be in places, I have to be writing articles. It's a lot of things. But one thing that I appreciate is the resilience that agriculture has embedded in me, because I'm able to balance in a business world. And I started seeing the gaps that, okay, I've got the knowledge as an agriculturalist, but I don't have the business knowledge. Then let me do, you bring in your DBAs, where you become a businesswoman. You are immersing yourself. And then let me do this one, because I don't have so much of technology skill. Let me go to, I'm with Porto Business School now, doing the most amazing, challenging program ever. But one thing that I learn every day, I'm becoming a better and better person, and I'm seeing change happening in me wherever I am. Because I'll be like, this used to be so difficult for me, technology wise, but now I can nail it. So it's one of those that, am I immersing change, or am I pulling myself into that? Everything has to start with me. If I'm going to be leading, and I'm leading with a monologue system, I'm not going to be able to share my leadership scale to the custodians or the ambassadors of the institutions. I always tell the principals that, when you see me every day, don't think that what I spoke yesterday is still the same. Possibility is that 24 hours after we met, it has changed, because every day change is happening in me. So don't remain in what we spoke about last month, because again, You can't even walk into my space and you are not prepared to immerse yourself into intellectual stimulation, because it means that somehow we're going to be failing the vision and the mission, and we are also going to frustrate what is called evolvement. How are we going to evolve if we are not moving into the same side of that? So in this prospect, it starts with us, or me as a leader and the other leaders that I have, to make sure that change that we expect happens. And of course, like I said, it's a step ladder. If I take 4 steps, somebody's taking 2 steps, another one is taking one more step, and then actually I won't be able to fall back because there's already people behind me. But when you take a step ladder and you're alone, you have an opportunity of just taking 5 steps back, because there's no one behind you that you feel is going to be overweight by you going down. So you always want to try and make sure that the person that is on the third step and you are on the fifth step is not going to be affected or even block the way. That is another biggest thing.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so so much for just sharing that. That the actual skill, it's the ability to be able to also share and impact that knowledge, and the the ability to stay as a continuous learner, keep improving on your skill set as a person. Because the more better you are as a person, the more you can serve yourself better and serve your community better. So thank you so much for sharing that. So from your own experience, what would you say are like the key differences between the traditional education model and the community rooted agricultural focused education that you have pioneered?
Um, I would say they work hand in hand. There is no different as such, because for me, I advocate for traditional agricultural practices because it comes with the health perspective for me. And especially because now there is so much technologized, and yes, we value and appreciate technology. However, it comes to a point of segment where it needs to end, not completely, but just not enter the other space, because then there is no balance. The other one is always going to be down. um you can't want to divorce these 2 segments, because um we plant on the soil. Whether it's water, it's a natural force. Whether it's a natural force, it comes back to that. We need the sun, we need the light, we need the night, we need the cold, we need, because there are other plants that thrives better in the cold. But it comes back to our traditional ways of doing things, because traditional communities back in the day, they were never hungry. I read a book which actually challenged me as a young woman in South Africa. Well, I still believe I'm a young woman. um where it said to me, back in the day, communities used to farm 5 hectares each, and 1 hectare was made to be taken to the palaces of their kingdoms, where there will be substantial food in the kingdom, so that when widowed and underprivileged and disabled families needs help, will come to the palace to get food supplies. Where are we today with that? I can't even farm in a 1 hectare because it's not good for my skin. The sun is too hot, and I've got all this and all this and all this. How much more is South Africa paying so much money every morning to just have a proper breakfast? And yet back then, we used to have breakfast from our own traditional milling chambers. I think I'll get time and send you some of the traditional milling chambers that we used to have, and they did not need any electricity, they did not need any oil, for the hydraulic to survive. It was just us pounding. And I think I experienced that back in the day with my grandmother when she used to do that as well. So for me, it comes back to that. And my mother did quite a lot of that with us. And I knew how to, do crop sorting, because she would give us this thing to show us how you separate it from this mechanism. I mean, it was a very interesting mechanism of sorting out crust and fine products. So In a nutshell, I think coming to that one, um, we cannot divorce them because they are working and working in parallel. It's just that we have lost the best practice model. Definitely, we have lost it.
I like how you talked about the fact that they are intertwined. It's not this or that. It's a combination. It's a fusion of both together. That's really good. So how can integrating, because I know that you're someone that is really heavy on cultural values, legacies for ourselves as African, right? So how can integrating a lot of cultural values into education sort of help in building stronger and more resilient agricultural community?
It's definitely the respect level, because once you respect what you do, the rest of the world is going to respect what you do. That starts there, because culturally we are working in a grounded space. When somebody says, I'm gonna doing this traditional event, the first thing we do, we think, I need to dress up properly. I cannot be showing half of my body in other instances. And I don't really have a problem with people dressing in that way. But you've never seen anyone going to farm in a short pant. you know as a lady, you've never seen somebody going to farm, half dressed, because it brings you and it grounds you to become a decent, because it's associated to a space where you are actually finding your inner you. And I'll tell you why, because even when I am doing my activity of farming, I'm always having a cup of tea with me. And this is more of my playing space. Like my driving time is my playing space, because I'm not with anyone, I'm with myself. So imagine how much it goes in to just serenade that. It is embodied with respect. It is embodied with time alone to reflect, reboot, and recover. It is embodied with where you sit and appreciate the value sense of this particular industry. So it starts with respect in all aspects, because you can never see anyone walking into a field. And of course, the boys always put on shorts and stuff, but it's in a decent manner. You can never see somebody farming and they're barefooted. They respect the soil enough. It's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. So this is why I'm saying, on this spectrum, it starts with respect. And the traditional cultural practices and the farming fraternity are the hardcore of a human life. I'm dressed up today because everything that is here is agricultural. Your cotton, I feel we've got a huge gap and a huge journey, longest journey to go through, to actually upload ourselves in other people, so that they can actually take the knowledge and then infuse it and splash it again. So I always say 1% impacted by agriculture, I believe that it's 7 people that are going to be impacted as well. um One of the days, I once said to this lady, when she was telling me, I got released from my duties at work, and I said, you know what, I do understand that you are no longer working, but maybe this is the time where you need to introspect and say, why did I get offloaded? Which part of me was not sufficient enough to actually be retained? But moreover, we come back and realize that in farming, if one family is farming, or one person is farming in the family, and there is 5 more people that are living and looking to survive from that, that means one farm can actually feed a whole family and even part of the community. So my model, and I've written a small kiddies book which I'm going to be dropping into multiple schools, because I want them to bring in the agriculture sector. Um it says, one family, one garden, and one school, one garden. And I've placed it there on how to best do it in such a language that even young kids will understand. and know how to use it, because I've also done farm simulation where they can start by doing their farms and then go and do it as well. But also where the teacher's disciplinary methodology needs to encompasses agriculture. That yes, you've been naughty, I'm not gonna beat you, but you're gonna be working in the garden, you know, and you will start seeing who are the farmers just right there. Within a year, you'll actually be having good young farmers in the school, but you're also capacitating them that they must get home and produce their own mini garden, because this one will want to take the garden further and through at home. There's this young man that I like, he's about 11 years old, and he owns a big farm right now, farming in a 12 hectare and supplying in a commercial market. I've met him in a conference and I was like, oh, sorry, who are you with? And he's like, no, I'm one of your speakers. I looked at him, I'm like, sorry, how old are you? He said 11. I got tapped into my chest and I said, this is where it warms my heart to see young South African immersing themselves. And he said to me, Prof, I used to struggle with my grades. And I told my dad I want to start a farming business. He listened to me, he supported me. And this is where again we come in as family lineage, like I say, that we need to support each other first if we want other people to support our own dreams. Because if I'm not supported family structure wise, I'm not going to be able to thrive outside, because constantly I'm going to be fighting this void. And then before you know it, this is not just a dream, it's a competition base. And this is what we don't want, because you cannot be in competition of feeding. You need to be in competition with yourself to grow and become a best version of yourself.
Ooh, that's really good. I think I need to take that in. That's really really good. Really really good. So, um, how does this is it now? Like, how does your I'm trying to put the questions together. Hmm. So, how does your institution sort of create opportunities for your students to connect the theory with like real world farming practices?
So our learning methodology goes to 30% theory, 70% practical, just like that.
And in other even in universities, the other way around. Like,
30% theory with us, 70% practical. Because if I'm going to be giving you a skill and I expect you to be reading about the skill and memorizing the skill, it's not impactful. I need to test you and you need to test yourself.
yeah.
At least the rationale of that time must be bigger than the theoretical part. So this is where I say you cannot leave high school and go and do agriculture in university. When in high school you did accounting, in primary you did all sorts of things, play, scream, and shout. And when you get to university, you want to start becoming a farmer. It doesn't work like that. You have to start from the bottom. You know, one of the biggest thing about our countries is that we are actually just behind in certain things. We have discorded certain things. I live in KZN where there's a lot of sugar cane, and people in KZN have no idea that sugar cane in Ghana is a dessert. And this is why I'm saying if we start with it from primary level, getting into university, it's a level up and you are just polishing you are going to come out as a commercial farmer. This is where I constantly stand in my ways that you're going to become a commercial farmer. Because if you started with the groundwork, for example, this is how the curriculum is with the primary. On admission, we don't want you to bring a typed paper, we don't want you to bring your coloring books, because it's not worth it for us. We want you to be admitted with your chickens, it's a male and female, and also your goatlets, because you need to start there. You're doing small animals, and of course we are now busy sorting out the rabbit section, where we're gonna let you be admitted as well, bringing in the rabbit if you don't want to do that. So this is where you do your garden, your small stock, and then you get to high school. Admission again, you do not bring certain things. You must be admitted with one sheep, one goat and one cow, because you now need to do the full three species livestock. By the time you get to the college part, you are actually specializing, whether you are crop or you are becoming a soil science, or you are becoming. So even now with us established the university, we are moving into sectoral MBAs, because we don't just want you to have a master's. We want you to have an MBA that is sectoral, which means when you graduate, you can either choose to be employable, which we don't promote. We want you to be self-employable graduate when you leave Total Agriculture University. So by the time you get to the university, you're dealing with numbers for your business so that you can become the strong version, immense. You leave directly from university, or even before you finish, you are already on your journey to do your commercial farming. So one of the biggest things about me, and I'm very much intentional when I do things, and people know that I don't do it if it's not going to impact anyone. I'm not going to do it if it does not scale up to any other places. So the model is actually at this part where I'm saying start there at a kindergarten, because we also have kids that still needs to deal with phobia, species phobia. And this is the time. I've been to China, where I would see that the things that here we treat as pets, it's actually good, nice food on the other side of the country. And I said, I'm going to be immersing some of those things so that we become the strongest supplier of this industry, because at least I know that there's a market for it. And then, of course, in the university segment, we're also infusing programs where students will be learning also on the market landscape, so that you don't just become a good farmer and you've got yields, good yields, but these yields are not leaving the shores of Africa, because then it means you are just adding to the well good farmers that we're going to talk about, but they're also not going to be economically developed, financially, sustainable. So this is part of how do we make sure that the agricultural education trains and teaches sustainable agricultural education, that you know it not even shifting the paradigm, but it's scaling up the agricultural sector for future sustainability. So if we start it from the primary school and moving up to the high school and college and university, and this is why it's quite so interesting for me, because I started the college first, and the college gave birth to the primary and the high school, and now it gave birth to its older baby. That's quite interesting. So the oldest institution I have is the college, and then it gave birth to the others, because the high school and the primary, it's 2 to 3 years now, and the university is almost a year now, because it started at the time where I started with the accreditation processes. So it just shows you that in between there, because I'm immense and I'm intentional, I started seeing all these open gaps, that okay, so in this industry there's a gaps of this and this and this. This is why when they get to the college, the first year is the most toughest year, because they did not play in this path. They only just walk in now and play in it. And I'm speaking to other students who are doing other courses in other industry, like for example the journalist. I always say journalists thinks that it's just about collecting stories. They can actually become agricultural journalists, and this is part of the qualification that we have curated in the university, where you are publicating about agricultural world, publications, stories, you know interviews, seminars. This is where people need to get involved. I mean, that, like your program particularly, it's one of the agricultural journals, because it is because of this setup that we are discussing agriculture particularly, and you're connecting all the industry players to come and share knowledge. So this is what we want, this is what we need to make sure that knowledge moves. And you've got lawyers, somebody that has studied law, they cannot get employed. Hey, there's opportunities in the agricultural law, because there is bylaws, there is, there's a whole lot. There is the export and import segment, which requires laws and requires advocates and lawyers who are inceived into understanding the agricultural landscape. I think some of the people would even be wondering, or even shocked to know that there is police who are actually in the SAPS but work in the livestock policing, where they deal with yes, because it's things that are not mentioned to us. Now, if you're studying journalism, don't hesitate to take a certain qualification in agriculture so that you can immerse yourself. But moreover, I come back to the industry of agriculture. You find that the people that are working in the agriculture offices, on their own, they are not farmers, but yet they are advocating a big chunk of industry of agriculture. So how are you going to be leading me to success if you are not also having a farm as an agricultural advisor, agricultural chief director? Everyone has to farm, and it must not be just because they are managing us, they are supporting us and all that. They also need to farm, because ultimately they also have to eat. So the fact that they are supporting me as agricultural extension officer, what do you eat at home? So these are the questions that I'm asking myself when I see them. I'm like, I wonder if they do farm, because even the laws of South Africa need to just also let down and allow them to have farms where they can produce food to, firstly, for survivalists, and then take it forth to also make other collaborators, because this is where, when they go on retirement as well, and I always advocate for these people all the time. When they go on retirement, it's only then that they want to start their life, and it's rather too late, because they don't have the feasibility of self-impacting, but they've been supporting and working with other farmers. So yeah, it's quite deep, and but for me, this is how I stretch the path. It starts in the primary and it ends in the university where you specialize. So the path is, this is where you learn the basics in the primary. You move to the high school, you learn the sub basics, and you move to the college. You are now focused, and then you move to the university, you are now economizing. So by the time that's why our qualifications are sectoral MBAs, where you now specializing. If you want to do agricultural economics, you want to do agricultural media, it's fine. But what remains is, you must become the deepest subject matter in everything that you do.
This is so beautiful, so beautiful. I say to people all the time, I say that agriculture is just that one sector that, regardless of your skill set, your expertise, or competences, there's a place for you. And you just further, further buttress that part with what you mentioned, just what you just mentioned right now. I have never really heard about agricultural journalism. And I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, this work I do with the podcast, this is agricultural journalism. Because I was saying to someone the other day that there are lots of people doing so much impactful work, but who's telling the story? These people
Yes.
are busy doing the impactful work. They don't have the time. They would love to tell the story, but they don't have the time to, because they're so busy doing the work. So busy doing the work. But I said somebody needs to tell the story. But just hearing that there's agricultural journalism, because I think about it like, I've really never heard about agricultural journalism. Is that what it is? But I was like, okay, it's fine, because I believe that for me, the more awareness we can create about the changes, the values that we are creating, the more we are inspiring more people to say, okay, there's something here for me. I could consider this. And I like how you sort of structure your academic ecosystem, when they start out with the basics from primary, secondary, they go further in, and then in uni they think about how they can make commercial uh, commercialize what it is that they've learned over time. This is so beautiful. Just learning how they can commercialize what they've learned over time. And I've never really heard about the sectoral MBA, because I know that there is a master's in like agribusiness, but hearing about the sectoral MBA for agriculture, that would be beautiful. Really good, really good. Because it's not just enough to be able to produce, but you have to be able to run the business and keep it sustainable. It's good. Really good. So, can you sort of share like a story of one of your students or your community that has been transformed through your educational initiative?
Yeah, it's quite a lot of them, and I'm gonna pick this one particularly because I sometimes call on him and check on him, and time and again when there is opportunity for him to exhibit, I also make him aware and give him the platform. And some of my students actually were also admitted in international universities, and one particularly was doing a program with a university which I'm currently building a partnership with in the Kenya, and he went there and he came back and said, I want you to have a partnership. So that's how much I have a relationship with my students in that segment. So there's this one who's particularly coming from from nothing. And today, if I tell you, I see his posts every day. It's not even about the glory, it's about the impact that the school has done in him. I always use this word that you are not passing through the school is passing through you.
Wow. Yes, yes, yes. Wow. That's really good. Really, really good. Really, really good. Hmm. Okay. So we still, like I said to you a couple of minutes back when we started this conversation, that one of the challenges that I have seen is a lot of young people still think about agriculture typically just like cutlass and hoes, right? So many young people see agriculture as an unattractive, old fashioned enterprise and they don't want to be part of it. From your own experience, what would you say can be done to help create this mind shift and then help people see agriculture as a profitable career path?
Yeah, I think I use this word without even being apologetic. Um we've now made agriculture look sexy, especially because you are able to become an economic, embodied person to play in the spectrum. And I want to make one example. When I started my career, particularly, I had friends, and the minute I went into agriculture, they all fell off. And I appreciated it because it resembled the a tree of life with leaves falling off and new one blossoming. And obviously in any blossom there's leaves that will constantly fall, and there will be one that stick because they are the main leaves. And yeah, so in this regard, it brings back quite a lot of emotional spectrum for me to actually say to I think South Africa or the continent at large, to wake up and not smell the coffee. The coffee has been long brewing. To wake up and catch the train, because that's a challenge. You can smell the coffee, and what do you do after smelling the coffee? But the train has got a destination. Where is your destination? Is your career path limited to what you see right now here? And also because they also need to understand this is an industry which is the toughest. And when I say the toughest, you are not taught to have disaster fund. You are not taught to have emotional fund. You are not taught to have passion fund, because somebody says, I'm farming, it's my passion. I look at them, I'm like, I hope you do have that passion fund in your pocket, because here we are not just coming to do passion, we are doing
Yes.
it and we have to do it. You are definitely going to be having to do it. So those are things that we need to create awareness. And again, the paradigm shift starts when we tell our young people or our communities that agriculture is not a soft spot and does not have a soft spot, meaning that it's gonna require you to till until you find the diamond. Definitely the diamond is just above, because you don't have to dig miles down. It's just above, but it requires your patience. I always tell my student to watch, there's a movie called Faith Like Potatoes, and it's an agriculture farming movie. It's the most amazing movie because this is where a farmer is giving up. He's not seeing the floral part of the vegetation, yet the vegetation is coming out strong underneath. Because of the heat, the vegetation started growing and nurturing underneath, but also because of the faith. So for you to farm, you need faith. You need strong mental capacity. You need
Yes.
good networks. You need
Yes.
to declutter your circle. You need
Yes.
to do intellectual stimulation. You need to
Yes.
start reprioritizing certain things. You need to
Yes.
move from comfort to hardships. You need to clone your certain beliefs that you have cloned with whatever. You need to find yourself. And lastly, you need to believe and nurture your dream, because you need to seek first to understand what others went through for them to understand you. Before you want others to understand you, seek first to understand others. And I always say, when they see us now posing for cameras, I mean, I'm not posing cameras because I'm a good actress. I'm posing cameras because I'm playing in a food industry. So if it's not you being on screen for something else that you are not so talented with, in agriculture we don't have like the sorting part. We take you as it is. um there's multiple careers which are not even saturated, where people learn on doing artificial insemination and doing semen sorting. That was my most I think my life went lit from that day when I learned that I can even choose my genders of my calves during the artificial insemination. I mean, that was amazing, you know. But
Yeah.
again, the young people needs to use the technology that they have to start infusing themselves into agriculture and making sure that they play for the right team, which is food security.
Whew. It has been an amazing conversation. It has been an amazing, an enlightening one at that for me. And I can imagine, the comment section, a couple of people just, sharing their thoughts on the comment section. It's buzzing here. I know that they are also feeling this as much as I'm feeling it, and also learning more as well. Just learning more. And this is really, really good. I like all the examples that you give as you share, and painting like a beautiful picture for everyone to see, and also see how they can become key players within this. And so this is more like my final question to you. Right? Maybe this question might need another question, but definitely, you're looking into the future. What's your vision for agriculture and education in Africa? Say the next 10 to 20 years.
um the safest words I can use is, now it's let's go back to traditional agricultural practices and correct the anatomy, because back then we used to do agriculture in primary schools. That curriculum was stripped off. It needs to go back. Once we can recover that, the next coming years we are going to be harvesting and harvesting and harvesting. So, punchline, go back to traditional agricultural practices, recover the curriculum, restore the purpose, and we are good to go. So the next coming years, we are going to be harvesting, because this is what we want. We cannot harvest if we are still missing the capacity or the skills and skill set, because it's supposed to be part of the mandatory skill set, but it's not there. So we just need to recover the curriculum, and the rest of the years we are just going to be harvesting.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, what would be your? This is more like your pattern shot, or like your word of advice to our listeners, particularly young Africans. What would be your pattern shot for them?
Don't procrastinate. Wake up now while you still have information that is coming to you free of charge, when there's still availability of networks. And because once the world turns into fourth industrial revolution, everything that you did not learn, you'll be accountable to yourself. The country won't be owing you anything, and you won't have a room to claim and blame apartheid, because it will be decades back. That fourth industrial revolution comes at the time where the history of apartheid is moving separately, and they are not moving parallel. So if you are not getting into this journey now, you'll be responsible and accountable to tell your children how you did not take part in a sustainability ecosystem of food security, to make sure that their next generation will thrive and survive from this industry. So we are going to be accountable, and they are going to be answerable to their own children in future for not taking this.
Wow, that's beautiful. I think it is more or less saying that it's time for young people to start taking responsibility and accepting being accountable, and also thinking about legacy. Like, no person is too young to think about legacy, right? So thank you so much. Thank you, Prof. Gabby. It's been an amazing over 80 minutes conversation that we've had here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I am immensely grateful. I've learned a lot just engaging and interacting with you today. My mind has just sort of stretched and just, opened up to so much possibility within the agricultural sector in terms of like the education. And then now I see, personally, I'm seeing a bit of like, oh, where there's like a missing link, because thank you, like, this conversation has brought that to my awareness. Thank you, thank you. There's so many people on the chat. Our listeners are saying thank you, that the conversation is insightful, thought provoking, enlightening, transformative, empowering, and they're saying thank you, Professor Gabby. Thank you so
It's
much.
my
Thank you for
pleasure.
your time coming in to share, despite your busy schedule. Thank you for your time coming in to share your expertise and also your knowledge with us on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'll be jumping into a lecture in 30 minutes time from now and up until 2 o'clock. Yeah, but thank you so much. It has also been an honor to just come out here in the morning. I always say, I am a curator of my own dreams, and I rely on God to sustain me, obviously. But despite not feeling well physically, I just could not make an excuse and say I'm not feeling well, I cannot. But if I could do it from where I am and still, bring impact, for me, it's, even if it's one life that is impacted from this conversation, that is my achievement. On a daily basis, when I wake up, I always say, God, I just want to impact one person's life, and they will see how they carry it through. So it is also a privilege and an honor to wake up, and I don't know what is your time country at the moment, your time zone, but I do know that it's almost 9:30 here, and I was very early up. Everyone in the house kept saying, oh, don't forget, you're supposed to be seated down at 7:30, because they know how much I take serious. And this is now the intentionality that I speak about, that even my family understands that when I get into those things, they are now a support system to make sure that I'm good and ready. And this is now the ecosystem that they know what is happening in my life particularly. But I must also thank your viewers and the viewers from South Africa, because I woke up quite a lot of people and I said, come, let's talk, because um building a set of network as well that is going to be sharing into this in future, and hopefully that we build an ecosystem as academia, as agricultural industry players, because this is what we need to remember, that when we study or learn, we are not learning for us to become and look good, but we need to offload so that new waters can come in, and we refill accordingly, and with times and with opportunities that we come across, are able to share. But thank you so much, and yeah, it's been awesome time also just offloading today, and at least I know that the room of this particular segment in my body and my mind has been offloaded. Then I can add new information today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Dr. Gabby. You're welcome. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the work that you're doing uh, down there in South Africa. And I can tell you that the work you're doing is not just going to just impact your region. It has the capacity to impact the entire continent. Because even the way that the model of the educational ecosystem you are creating, it's really impactful. And I think that there's so much that we can do as regards changing and reshaping our curriculum so that it's much more useful and relevant to the times that we are in. And I like how you talked about the need to also incorporate, our traditional ways, even as much as we embrace technology. But what were we doing before that worked, and how can we sort of improve on them rather than just discarding them? And those are things that I am in full alignment with. So thank you so much.